Welcome back, and we're looking at the kind of voting numbers that we've seen come in for rural India, and clearly there's a lot of distress which we have seen in sense of numbers that have shown in. Mr. Hussain, the first question to you, and while of course there would be a lot of reforms thrown out, we already have started to hear that from the coalition government that is going to be formed. What is your sense is the top 5-point agenda that you would see come in when it comes to agri as reforms?
I think the topmost agenda should be to create non-farm jobs, because 46% people are dependent on agriculture, and the income from agriculture is so low, just about 10,000 rupees, as the situation assessment survey has shown. In many states like Bihar, Jharkhand, etc., it is just about 6,000-7,000 rupees. Even in UP, it is only 8,000 rupees. So these people have to be adequately trained and provided job opportunities in other sectors. You see, it takes a lot of effort to create opportunities in labor-intensive centers. So far, we have seen that the emphasis has been on capital-intensive centers. So that gets a lot of eyeballs on TV, on business channels, etc. You know, Foxconn is making this, and certain such thing is being manufactured in Gujarat. So that is point number one. And secondly, I think, as we mentioned earlier, as far as possible, the government policies should protect the MSP. Now, in case of commodities which are imported, this can be done by adjusting the tariff. And in case of commodities in which we are surplus, rice, for example, this can be done by suitable application of measures like lifting of ban on export, etc. So we have seen that many of these decisions have harmed the farmers' interest. And thirdly, I foresee that the amount under PM Kisan may be increased, even though I would like that all the farmers across India, all the landholders should not get the same amount under PM Kisan. The farmers who are growing crops in non-irrigated areas should get a higher amount.
Okay. Mr. Sharma, what would you add to this? There's a lot of roadmap that we can create and a lot of important points that perhaps the government should be looking at as well. But do you think the right allocation of funds, perhaps giving a roadmap with a timeline, is going to be equally important?
Well, I'm so glad that you talked about the right allocation of funds, because I think that is very, very important to ensure that agriculture sector is taken out of poverty that is perpetually in. Why I'm saying this is that we have a budget which is about 48 lakh crore. And out of 48 lakh crore, the budget for agriculture is just 1.25 lakh crore. Now, 1.25 lakh crore, out of which about 60,000 crore is the PM Kisan Nidhi, which is 500 rupees per month to farmers, which means the agriculture budget effectively then remains, what is left behind is only about 75,000 crores. Now, 75,000 crores is the amount of money that is being spent on agriculture, which is 700 million people. I think it is time now that we spend 50% of the budget, of the total budget, goes to agriculture. Let us not be ashamed of it. I think that's the only way to see that a balance can be maintained. And this section of the society, which is large, which is marginalized, has to be pulled up. And the only way to do is if you allocate, make the right kind of allocation. So let us build up our courage to see that this can happen. And please don't be worried that, oh, where did this happen in the country? When Mr. Vajpayee came up with his government first time in 1996, he actually announced that 60% budget will go for 60% of the population, which was the farming population at that time. Now, the tragedy was that government actually fell after 13 days. Now, I think what Mr. Vajpayee left behind is something that the new coalition government should pick up and carry forward. If he could promise 60% of the budget for 60% population, I think in all sagacity, we should also ensure that 50% of the budget now should go to 50% of the population. That's one way we can really refurbish the kind of the sector that needs to be pushed up. B, of course, is the farmers' income. I think the time has come. We must now go and fix up a kind of a guaranteed income for farmers. It does not mean that the government has to buy that. Let me make it very clear. What we are saying is that everyone should be buying above that price, whether it is organized retail, whether it is the government agencies, or whether it is the RTRs. Everyone has to buy above that price. And please don't be worried about market distortion. In America, the studies tell us that 50% of the profits that the companies are charging is because of greed, is because of the extrapolated profits profits that they have expected. And nobody's talking about market distortion there. But when you raise the farmers' income in India, suddenly there is a hue and cry about market distortion. Let me make it very clear there. Markets will always adjust. Don't worry to it. The fact of the matter is, this section of the society has to be now pulled up and brought to a level that they can be also, equally benefiting from the kind of reforms that are taking place in this country. So two things,
yes.
as I said, MSP, a guaranteed MSP for all crops across the regions is something that is required and should be done. And of course, allocating 50% budget to agriculture. Then, of course, there are issues like insurance, now climate insurance, climate-based insurance, and so on and so forth. More importantly, Manisha, I would say that the most important part is if you can have an ease of doing business, please tell me why can't you have ease of doing farming? Ease of doing farming is very important because 60 to 70% of the problems that farmers encounter is because of the governance issues. And if you ensure ease of farming, and I'm not saying ease of agribusiness, please be very clear. All I'm saying is ease of farming is very important. And once you do it, you at least remove the hurdles that farmers encounter every other day. So that is the kind of a roadmap that we should be focusing our attention on.
That sounds like a brilliant roadmap. I only hope that it comes with the timelines as well and proper governance, as you said. Mr. Chaturvedi, the final answer from you, really. There's a lot of conversation that we hear from the industry that a lot of policies that the government makes, the industry is not consulted for it. As farmers, I can only imagine and believe that this is a sector which is never taken into consideration when we are making policies. So what is your sense and what is your top agenda that the government should be looking for when it comes in?
No, I totally agree with what Siraj Bhai said. The number of people dependent on agriculture needs to be reduced. For our kind of agriculture, you don't need so many people engaged, which puts more pressure on which means we have to find alternate jobs for them. Secondly, productivity has still not been given the due importance. So it's important that wherever required, we should introduce GM, like in soya, in mustard or whatever. So the farmer's income, it's something criminal. Almost 12 million hectares of land is being used for soya, and we are just producing only about 11 to 12 million tons of beans, whereas the world would actually be producing something like 40 million against that kind of land usage. So that's also important. Higher MSP for oilseed and pulses. This is also important because the nation is struggling to be self-sufficient in that. And last but not the least, is in policy making, urban bias should be toned down a bit, which would mean that the rural sector needs to be given the right kind of thrust which is required. And lastly, these knee-jerk reactions, like in case of sugar industry, one fine day you find that your ethanol production is banned. You can't produce ethanol from juice. So all that investment which has gone into that goes for a six, and the companies come to grief. So I think all these things, and lastly, it's also important that commercially also we need to ensure that the farmers are able to get the right kind of price, which means you will have to be commercially much sharper in your policy interventions. So that is something which we think would probably improve the situation as far as the farm sector is concerned. Yeah.
All right. Well, that, of course, are the top points on what the government should perhaps be taking notice of. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us and telling us on what really perhaps went wrong and what is that the government should be looking at now in sense of roadmap, timelines and investments when it comes to agriculture as a sector. We believe the government perhaps would take notice of that. Thank you so much for joining us. But with that, that's all the time that we have on the show. Thank you for watching.